This is another story illustrated by me, Clay Hammock. And again, I kind of had a different idea to do this story. This one caught my attention in the library, and it's called The Relatives Came by Cynthia Rylant, illustrated by Stephen Gamble. There it is. Here come the relatives in their old kind of second-hand looking vehicle with all their luggage tied to the top. There was a day where people used to travel a lot like that. Now perhaps they do it in vans, SUVs. But this is a good story, and I'm doing it in a slightly different way. And you'll know what I mean when I start the story. One moment, please. The relatives came. This is for Aunt Agnes Little and her brood. Dick Jackson and his, Jerry and ours. And that must be how they got the idea for the book, because they must visit the relatives. This is how our story starts. A nice, beautiful place in Virginia. The relatives are getting ready to visit their other relatives. Here's their house, and they're loading it up. They're getting ready for a long trip to see the relatives. And the relatives are waiting to see them. It was in the summer of the year when the relatives came. They came up from Virginia. They left when their grapes were nearly purple enough to pick, but not quite. They had an old station wagon that smelled like a real car. And in it they put an ice chest full of soda pop and some boxes of crackers and some bologna sandwiches. And up they came from Virginia. They left at 4 in the morning. Now, that's when it's still dark. Yes, sir. They left 4 in the morning when it was still dark, before even the birds were awake. And birds get up early. There they go. There goes their old clunkery looking second-hand kind of a vehicle. Bumpity, bumpity. Here, hit, hit, here. And off they go. And it looks like a full moon. They drove all day long and into the night. And while they traveled along, they looked at the strange houses and different mountains. And they thought about their almost purple grapes back home. They thought about Virginia. But they thought about us too, waiting for them. So they drove all day long through all these trails that led up the hills and down the hills. They saw the weird houses here, up on the ledges. And they drove and drove, looking at the scenery, heading to see the relatives. So they drank up all their pop, and ate up all their crackers, and traveled up all those miles until finally they pulled into our yard. Boom! Boom! Hey! Look at what our relatives did. They smashed right into our fence. Cool, man. Real cool. What a neat crash. Come on, Dottie, let's meet the relatives. Then it was hugging time. Talk about hugging. Those relatives just passed us all around their car, pulling us against their wrinkled Virginia clothes. Crying sometimes. They hugged us for hours. You were always my cousin, Billy. We two are just alike. Come on, give Clyde a big hug. Ooh, ooh. I sure did miss you. I sure did. Come here, you little tater. My, you've grown so. Give Bun Buns a big hug. Ooh, ooh, ooh. Oh, my tater. Oh, you've grown really big. Oh, hello there, Uncle Ben. It's nice to see you again. Land's sake, my boy. You've grown up into quite a young man. It sure is nice to see you again. Sure is nice. Then it was into the house, and so much laughing and shining faces and hugging in the doorways. You have to go through at least 4 different hugs to get from the kitchen to the front room. Those relatives. Oh, my Pamela. My, you've grown. Give Aunt Audrey a big hug. Oh, my little Pamela, how you have grown. Oh, you little Jim. You're always were my favorite, you little tart. Oh, look at you. You're getting so big. And finally, after a big supper, they all sat together in 2s and 3s all around. There was quiet talk, and of course they were sitting in 2s and 3s. But before they sat down, they had the most scrumptious meal. And there was so many of them, they had to sit at different tables. And let's see what a few of them were saying. Let's see what a few of them were saying. Yum, 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 yum. Good, yum, yum, good. Gobble, 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 gobble. Ooh, that's good. Yum, 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 yum. Here, boy. Ruff, ruff. Here's a nice meat for you, boy. Here you go. Ruff, 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 ruff. Oh, George! Oh, you were always the funny one. Hold still, you little brat, baby. Hold still and let Grandma make you a plate. I want that. Gimme. I want that. Gimme. The relatives were particular about their beds, which was good since there wasn't any extras. So a few squeezed in with us, and the rest slept on the floor, some with their arms thrown over the closest person, or some with an arm across one person and a leg across another. It was different going to sleep with all that new breathing in the house. I can't go to sleep. Mama. And on they tried to sleep. So then, yes sir, the relatives stayed for 2 weeks. Or rather, they stayed for weeks and weeks. They helped us tend the garden. And they fixed any broken things they could find. And it looks like They also gave haircuts. Sit still, boy. This won't hurt.
But I don't want a haircut. My hair's just fine. I don't want a haircut.
Oh, boy, come on. You'll look good when it's over. Just calm down, calm down. It'll be all right. They ate up all our strawberries and melons. Then promised we could eat up all their grapes and peaches when we came to Virginia. Okay, here's Johnny. And where's Johnny? I'll be doggone. So here we go. Let's see what some of these people are doing. Hey, yeah, Jesse. We'll have Uncle Ben's fence fixed in no time. Now, hold her steady. Hold her steady there, Jesse. Hold her steady. Come on, hold her steady. Oh, that's much better. Now we've only got 19 more boards to go. And they were all singing and playing over here. Boy, could those relatives play. They seemed like they could just play anything. They were really good at it. Turkey in a hay, turkey in a straw, turkey in my pie, gonna boil him all day long. Then we'll fix the turkey, then we'll dress him good, and we'll eat him all, and we'll be glad that we did. Oh yeah! But none of us thought about Virginia much. We were so busy hugging and eating and breathing together. Come on, gang! Smile for the picture! Smile! Click! Click! Oh, yeah, well, that'll be a good picture.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. I can't wait to see. Give me a picture when you... Okay, yeah. Yeah, that's a really good one.
Oh, don't worry. I'll send you some pictures when we get back to Virginia. Finally, after a long time, the relatives loaded up their ice chest and headed back to Virginia at 4 in the morning while it was still dark. And we stood in our pajamas and waved them goodbye in the dark. We watched the relatives disappear down the road. Then we crawled back into our beds that felt too big and too quiet. But we sure enough fell asleep, that's for sure. And the relatives drove all day long. Zip, 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 zip. And into the night. And while they traveled along, they looked at the strange houses and different mountains. And they thought about their dark purple grapes waiting at home in Virginia. But they thought about us too, missing them, and they missed us. And when they finally came home in Virginia, they crawled into their silent, soft beds and dreamed about the next summer when they would visit us again, yeah. And that's what they did. They dreamed about next summer. And then they thought about their grapes. See, what it was they grew grapes. And they were almost ripe, right before they decided to visit the relatives. And when they came back, the grapes were ready to eat. So if the relatives want to eat the grapes, they're going to have to visit them next year. because I imagine they're going to eat up the grapes pretty fast. And here's the grapes. Here's the grapes that they're going to eat. And here is the electronic device so that if you take it out the library, it will sound an alarm if you didn't check it out. And that ends The Relatives Came by Cynthia Rylant. The end. And I hope it worked.